Welcome into Prospect Watch, where I give you a list of prospects to look at in a certain draft range. A while ago, I dropped a Prospect Watch video on the 23rd pick, and I wanted to drop this one a little bit earlier, but I got caught up with a bunch of draft graphics for our draft live stream on Thursday. Yes, on Thursday we'll be streaming every pick of the NBA draft, and the graphics package I got for this is absolutely sick. Putting a lot of time in it. I'm very proud of it. I'm trying to give you guys the best production possible for draft night in what should be a monumental night for the Portland Trail Blazers no matter what happens. So hopefully you can join us. We'll be live streaming right here on this channel, on our main channel, going live about 30 minutes to an hour before the draft starts. So I'm looking forward to that. But in this video, I'm going to give you prospects to look at for the Portland Trail Blazers 43rd pick. They're going to be prospects that should be available at some point in the second round. Some of them will definitely get taken before the 43rd pick, but Portland could always try and trade up from 43 into the 30s potentially for some of these higher ranked prospects. But before we jump into the video, since we're talking about second round picks, which could otherwise be dubbed as sleepers, you can get yourself a sleeper with Manta Sleep Mask. If you struggle to fall asleep or don't feel rested after waking up, Manta Sleep is the #1 solution for you. They have a selection of sleep masks to fit your needs, all of which you can check out by clicking the link in the description box below. You can find the sleep mask to fit your needs, and you can get a better night's sleep. Getting a Manta Sleep Mask is a great decision for yourself, not only for your health, but also your ability to be productive the following day, as a great night's sleep is extremely important, and I want you guys to take care of yourselves, take care of your sleep, and check out Manta Sleep Mask. Use the promo code UPRISE for a 10% discount, UPRISE, so that when you uprise in the morning, you're uprising well rested. Everything for them is in the description box below. Thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. The first prospect that we're going to talk about is Andre Jackson Jr. from the University of Connecticut. UConn won the national championship, and Andre Jackson Jr. was a big part of that. He's one of my favorite second-round sleepers, and I think there's a chance he goes in the first. It's likely that Portland would have to trade up a little bit to get him, but he's just a really good prospect as he's a lockdown perimeter defender, 6'6" with a long wingspan, can defend 3 positions. But then on the offensive end, he's a really smart connective piece, passes the ball really well, cuts really well. It's just your prototypical Swiss Army knife, well-rounded role player. He played some point guard at time for UConn. He can play the 3 with his measurements. And for Portland, he could essentially fill the Josh Hart role that I always wanted Josh Hart to fill off the bench. The one knock on Jackson is his shooting. He only shot 28% from 3 last season, 29% for his college career, and 70% from the free throw line in college as well. But I don't think his form is all that bad, and Andre Jackson just seems like the type of well-rounded defensive player that could come into the league, develop into an okay three-point shooter, and then be one of the best role players in the league because of it. I've had these feelings before with Herb Jones and Bruce Brown, and now Blazer fans are begging for those role players. But instead, maybe the Blazers should just get ahead and get one of these types of role players in potentially the second round with Andre Jackson Jr. Julian Strother is a player I'm very fond of, being a Gonzaga fan. He developed into one of the better players in the country, and last year in his junior season averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds, and an assist per game, shooting 53% from 2 and 41% from 3. And that 3-point shooting is the main selling point with Strother, as he's great shooting both off the catch and off the dribble. He can shoot off of screens, has deep range, and is just a 3-point sniper. At a legitimate 6'6", Strother is a small forward at the next level. He can also slide down and play some 2-guard, and he provides a little bit more size than your prototypical 3-point specialist. The one thing I love about Strother, though, is that he's actually dangerous when ran off the 3-point line. He's not somebody that's going to get to the rim a whole lot and finish at a super high clip, but his floater is deadly. He can get it off in traffic, get it off driving both left and right, and when run off the 3-point line at the next level, I foresee Strother being able to do some damage by knocking down floaters or making the right decision, just basic reads when the help rotates over to take that away. The Blazers could be looking to fill that 3-point specialist role off the bench. Getting a guy with some decent size who can play some 3 for that role would make some sense. James Nashi is a guy who's rising up draft boards, and if Portland elects to use their 23rd pick, could be a guy taken in that range. There's a lot of buzz around him being taken in the first round now. However, there is still a chance he falls. He's kind of on the fringe of being a first or second round draft pick. Nashi's a really solid defensive big man, blocks a lot of shots, and he's quick on his feet. He can even switch out and defend some guards. He's a center that should be able to be utilized in any sort of pick and roll scheme and be able to handle some switching as well. Offensively, he's a solid finisher when he's able to get quality shots off inside. He struggles with his touch. He's not a guy who's going to post up a whole lot. He's mostly just a dump off and dunk it type of guy, a lob target, and somebody that when he has space can load up and finish well. Offensively, he's just not skilled. He's not somebody that's going to be making decisions with the ball in his hands, not somebody that's going to impress you with his passing. He's not a shooter. He could actually come into the league being below a 50% free throw shooter because his numbers overseas were worse than that. But as a rim runner with solid size, decent athleticism, some defensive ability, and the ability to rebound, Nashi could be the next Clint Capella. Being able to get that potentially in the second round could be really solid value. Jordan Walsh was one of 3 highly touted freshmen to join the Arkansas Razorbacks this past season. The other 2 were Anthony Black and Nick Smith Jr., both of whom should go in the first round. Meanwhile, Jordan Walsh is more of a second-round prospect as a really good defensive player, but somebody who has some serious offensive limitations. He shot only 28% from 3 in college, and although he flashed some upsides of connective playmaking and being able to make the right reads, the numbers don't jump off the page there either, as he had more turnovers than assists. However, Walsh jumps off the page on the defensive side of the ball. He's 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan, 8'11" standing reach, which is phenomenal measurements for a small forward. He should be able to guard positions 1 through 4, has quick feet on the perimeter, and is able to disrupt plays with that long wingspan. For the Blazers who need a good point of attack perimeter defender, preferably with some size and versatility, Jordan Walsh could make a lot of sense. If Walsh can develop his three-point shot and tap into a little bit more of that playmaking ability, he could be a steal in the second round. Kobe Brown is one of the older prospects in this year's NBA draft, as he was a 4-year player at the University of Missouri. But this past season, he had a great year, leading Missouri to the NCAA tournament. Coming in at 6'6.5" with a 7'1" wingspan and 8'11" standing reach, Kobe Brown has the size to play the power forward position, and he's also pretty dang strong. He weighs 250 pounds. He's a decent athlete for that size though, and that helps him finish on the interior. He shot 60% from 2. But the reason why Brown has catapulted himself into draft talk is because he made a massive leap in terms of his three-point shooting last season. After being 25% or lower from behind the arc his first 3 years in college, Kobe Brown shot 45.5% from there last year on 1.5 makes per game. If this shooting can translate to the league, Brown's an intriguing player because he's able to defend at a pretty high level. It's questionable whether he can slide down and defend guards, but he should be good defending forwards. He's a smart player as well, which shows up with some of his help defense, as well as some of the reads he makes offensively, as he's a surprisingly solid passer that should be able to be a connective piece on a good team. Brown just feels like the well-rounded player who could come in and play a role right away, do a lot of things solidly, but doesn't get drafted high because he's one of the older prospects that doesn't have that high of an upside. But being able to get a role player with a solid floor in the second round generally ends up being pretty good value. With Brown, it's just going to be if that three-point shooting increase last season was legitimate or a fluke. Julian Phillips is one and done from the University of Tennessee, who should be a solid defender at the next level, but offensively did not showcase what he did in high school at the college level. Coming into college, he was looked at as a guy who would be able to knock down some threes and be able to create a little bit off the dribble. That didn't really play out at Tennessee. He only shot 24% from behind the three-point arc. He wasn't much better inside the arc at 46%. He was an inefficient player all around, unless he got to the free throw line, where he shot almost 4 attempts per game at 82%, which is a solid clip. The thing with Phillips is his form looked better in high school than it did in college, and Tennessee is not known for developing good shooters. Of course, the Blazers have Chiante Johnson on the roster. He was not a good shooter in college, and he has become better in the league. With Julian Phillips, if he can get back to making threes at the level that he was in high school, he could be a solid 3-and-D prospect with some youth that could be available in the second round. Jalen Wilson was a 4-year player from the University of Kansas, helping them win an NCAA tournament in 2022. With Christian Brown and Ochai Agbaji entering the draft afterwards, this past year was Jalen Wilson's breakout season, as his scoring jumped from 11 to 20 points per game. He averaged 8 rebounds and a little bit more than 2 assists. And although his efficiency wasn't great, shooting 48% from 2 and 34% from 3, Wilson showcased enough to get him drafted in this year's draft. Wilson is a guy who projects as just being solid on both ends of the floor. He's not going to wow you with any of his creation ability offensively, but he can get to the rim at times, and he will have stretches where he knocks down threes. And then defensively, he's more of a secondary guy, somebody that hopefully won't hurt teams at the next level. His measurements were a little questionable: 6'5.5" without shoes, a 6'8" wingspan, and an 8'3.5" standing reach. But he's a guy who won in college, played on some good teams, and played his role well before breaking out this past season, and that's an archetype that a lot of teams like in the second round. Chiante Johnson is a name you might be familiar with, as he was a major story when he collapsed playing for Florida State. Johnson, who was later diagnosed with a heart condition, collapsed in December of 2020 in the first season after COVID-19. It's unknown whether there was a link there, but regardless, Chiante Johnson was a guy who was looked at as a draft prospect back then, so it was awesome to see him playing a role, this time at Kansas State, for a team that almost made the Final Four. Johnson has been medically cleared to be selected in the NBA draft according to his agents, and I'm extremely happy for him to finally get this chance to live out his dream. At Kansas State, he averaged 17 points per game, 7 rebounds and 2 assists, shooting 55% from 2 and 40% from 3. In his college career, he's a 39% three-point shooter, and he provides a lot of intrigue as a small forward who's a little bit undersized at 6'4" without shoes, but has a 7-foot wingspan to make up for it, an 8'7" standing reach, and is extremely strong, weighing at 240 pounds. Defensively, Johnson can defend 1 through 3 and could be a help for Portland on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, he knocks down threes, can slash a bit, get to the rim a little bit. That's probably not going to be a major strength at the next level, but he's a solid athlete that can make use of that in transition. And he's just a solid all-around guy who could be a 3-and-D role player for a good team at the next level. That's the archetype the Blazers should be looking at here in the second round. Chiante Johnson could be the right pick for them. Olivier Prosper is a guy that I have fallen in love with, and I actually have a top 20 grade on him. He's risen up draft boards and will probably get taken in the first round. However, there still is a chance, and I've still seen mock drafts that have Prosper in the second round. If the Blazers can trade up into the 30s and select him, I think Prosper is a guy that could play a role for the Blazers next year if they're trying to win. Part of his rise was a good draft combine. He measured in at 6'7" without shoes with a 7'1" wingspan, an 8'8" standing reach, and he's also a good athlete. He's a versatile defensive piece. He defends point guards through power forwards extremely well, and he might even be a guy that can battle against some centers in the league. He's also become an okay three-point shooter. He shot 34% from behind the arc last year at Marquette, and for his career, he's a 75% free throw shooter, so he does have some solid touch. The Blazers haven't had a versatile defender at a power forward position that can defend 4 spots since they had Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless, and those two guys did wonders for the Blazers defense. Getting a guy in that mold that could be better both as a three-point shooter and a finisher, as Prosper shot 62% inside the arc, could be a really good archetype to have off the bench at the backup 4 spot. Prosper is a guy I'd take a hard look at with the 23rd pick if I'm Portland, but if the Blazers, say, trade that pick and Prosper falls potentially into the early second round, the Blazers should definitely be trying to trade up from 43 to get him. The final guy that I have for this video is Ghee from Washington State University. He's a big man listed at 6'10" without shoes, has a 7'3" wingspan, a 9'2.5" standing reach, and is a solid athlete. However, he's very raw, shot 51% from 2, which is not good for a big man, 27% from 3, but he shot more than 1 attempt per game. His free throw percentage did improve from his freshman to his sophomore season, going from 49% to 67%, so maybe he has enough touch to develop into more of a three-point shooter, but he's just a really raw player that in other drafts might not get selected, but in this year's draft, which is kind of weak past the top 40 picks and doesn't have a lot of big talent, he could go as high as the 30s. Given his athleticism, length, and size, and the fact that he started college early and is still relatively young despite spending 2 years there, he has the mobility to stick in the NBA and has a lot of hypothetical upside if his shooting or offensive skill set can be drastically improved. Anyway, that's a wrap for this Prospect Watch video. Let me know if you've watched any tape on these guys before and what you think of any of the prospects I talked about. I also have a link to Adam Spinella's channel. He's a guy who does a lot of really good scouting tape on a lot of the prospects that I talked about, so you can go and look at these guys for yourselves. Thank you to Manta Mask for sponsoring this video. Remember the promo code Uprise and the link in the description box below if you want to check them out and get yourself a better night's sleep. And with that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.